Okay, so let's unpack this one. We're diving deep today into, well, a really remarkable story. It's about national transformation in Eritrea, this incredible effort over, what, 30 plus years, tackling water scarcity head on by building reservoirs.
That's exactly right. And our sources for this deep dive, they give us a really good look. We've got insights from Mr. Eob Jabremiskul from the Ministry of Agriculture. Plus, and this is really powerful, these firsthand stories from people,
Yeah.
people directly impacted.
Right, those personal accounts.
Yeah.
And our mission here is, well, to get a handle on the sheer scale of it all, the strategy, how it changed, and importantly, the real impact it's had over these past 33 years. The sources paint a picture of just huge change.
It's definitely a story of significant change, yeah, worth digging into.
So let's start at the beginning then. What was the situation like water-wise back when Eritrea gained independence? What were they working with?
Well, the starting point was pretty basic according to the material. At independence, you're looking at a really small number of reservoirs, just 138 in total across the whole country.
138. Wow. Okay. That really does sound limited.
It was. And crucially, there weren't really any structures specifically for, like, diverting floodwaters, no diversion schemes to speak of, and no subsurface dams either, those underground ones.
Okay, so just the standard surface storage and not much of it. What about the size of those existing ones?
Also quite small. The average pond, we're told, held only about 25,000 cubic meters. And the microdams, they had averaged around 300,000 cubic meters, so relatively small capacities.
Right, 25,000, 300,000, not figures that suggest a huge impact on, say, agriculture.
Exactly. The material points out that their contribution to the agricultural sector back then was, well, understandably pretty limited. You just didn't have the water security needed.
Okay, so before we get to the massive expansion, it probably helps to define the terms. The ministry has different categories for these structures, right?
Yeah, that's a good idea. Helps clarify what we're talking about. The material lays out a few main types. First, you have diversion structures. Now, these aren't primarily for long-term storage. Their job is to cleverly channel floodwaters, which are often full of fertile silt, by the way, onto nearby farmland. They can be simple earthen barriers, or made from gabions, wire mesh cages filled with stones, or even concrete. The Sheep Spate irrigation scheme is mentioned as a typical example of this.
Got it. So it's about using those temporary seasonal flows smartly. What about subsurface dams? You mentioned those weren't around initially.
Right. These are pretty clever, especially for hotter areas. They're basically dams built under the riverbed. The big advantage is cutting down water loss from evaporation because the water's stored underground, shielded from the sun.
That is smart. Keep it cool, keep it stored. Okay, and then ponds. Those sound simpler.
Yeah, ponds are described as, smaller, usually shallowly dug earth structures, just for local water collection, basically.
And the main category, conventional dams. They're broken down by size.
Yes, exactly. The ministry categorizes them based on how much water they hold in cubic meters. So at the smaller end, you have microdams, 50,000 up to 500,000 cubic meters. Then small dams, 500,000 up to 1 million cubic meters. Medium dams are next, 1 million to 3 million cubic meters. Then you get into the bigger ones, big dams, 3 million to 10 million cubic meters. And finally, the largest category, strategic dams, anything over 10 million cubic meters. These are really significant water bodies.
Okay, that framework helps a lot. Micro, small, medium, big, strategic. From that initial baseline of 138 structures, what's the picture today? How much growth are we talking about?
The growth is, well, it's huge. The total number of dams across those different sizes is now around 810.
810, seriously.
Yeah.
From 138, that's more than a six-fold increase. Building at that scale over 3 decades is pretty intense.
It really is quite something. And the source material gives us a breakdown of that 8 and 10 figure, too. So today they have 9 strategic dams, those massive ones. 3 big dams are listed, though notice the Jojera and Adihalo dams aren't in that count, which is interesting. Maybe they're even larger or classified differently.
Mm-hmm. Copy.
Then 25 medium dams,
Yeah.
83 small dams, and 262 micro dams.
Okay, so a lot across all size categories. What about the simpler structures?
Right. In addition, just looking at the central, southern, and Ansiba regions, there are 361 ponds counted. That number apparently fluctuates elsewhere. And they've also added 3 of those subsurface dams we talked about, plus 3 major diversion structures in key agricultural areas.
So just a massive, across-the-board effort to increase water harvesting and storage. How did they decide where to put all these? Was it just wherever seemed possible, or was there a strategy?
Well, we learn it evolved. Initially, it seems the approach was more demand-driven, based on requests from the different administrative regions, but then they revised the strategy quite significantly. They started using GIS technology, geographic information systems.
Ah, using mapping tech. Why the shift? What was the goal with GIS?
The main goal mentioned was to ensure a more rational and equitable distribution of water resources across the whole country. It wasn't just about finding good dam sites, it was about social justice, making sure benefits were spread fairly.
That's a really important aspect. Equity. What factors did they consider with this new GIS-based approach?
They looked at a combination of things: the agricultural potential of an area, population density, typical rainfall, the size of the catchment area, the land that drains water towards the site, and crucially, doing needs assessments with the local people.
So integrating technical data with community needs makes sense. And the
Mm.
strategy focused a lot on medium and small dams at the village level. Why that specific focus?
Yes, the material highlights that. The thinking was to provide villages or clusters of villages with their own dependable nearby water source. The aim was to enable them to move towards sustainable agriculture, year-round farming, not just being reliant on the unpredictable rains.
And the bigger picture behind that village level focus, what was the ultimate goal?
The ultimate goal described is pretty transformative. It's about changing villages from potentially subsistence-level farming
Huh.
into communities of small and medium-scale commercial farmers. Farmers who can produce consistently, maybe even a surplus for the market, building local economies.
So national food security linked directly to empowering local communities through reliable water. Okay, let's talk impact. What have these 810 dams and all this strategy actually done for agriculture? Do we have numbers?
We do, and the numbers reported are quite striking. With this widespread irrigation becoming possible, cereal production is said to have doubled. Vegetable production increased sixfold.
Doubled cereals, 6 times the vegetables. Those are serious gains in essential food production. What about fruit?
Fruit is where the most dramatic figure comes in. According to the source, fruit production has increased by an incredible 71 times compared to previous levels.
71 times. That's just astronomical. It really shows how water access unlocks certain types of agriculture, doesn't it? High-value crops.
Absolutely. It underlines the potential dramatically. And the source emphasizes that despite these huge gains, the work isn't finished. The momentum needs to continue. The goal being for every single village to have that dependable water source for intensive, integrated farming to fully achieve food security.
It's a long-term vision. Has all this construction and focus on water had any effect on people's general awareness about conservation?
Yes, definitely. Mr. Jabremskal notes a significant rise in public awareness regarding soil and water conservation. He connects us directly to why people participate so passionately in the annual national conservation programs. They see the benefits. They understand the importance now.
That buy-in from the community must be critical for maintaining everything long-term. Looking forward, what's the next phase? Are they changing the technology?
It seems so. The strategy keeps evolving. While building structures continues, they're now starting to focus on the next level of irrigation tech, specifically introducing photovoltaic-powered pressurized systems. So think solar-powered drip or sprinkler irrigation, making water use even more efficient on the farms.
Right, using renewables to power more precise irrigation. That's interesting. Okay, strategy and numbers are one thing, but you mentioned those firsthand accounts. That's where we really see the human impact, right?
Exactly. These testimonials were gathered from 5 different regions, and they really bring the story to life. And it's worth repeating, as the source material notes, that the specific microdams highlighted in these particular stories involve collaboration with the African Development Bank, the AFDB.
Got it. Thanks for clarifying that collaboration aspect mentioned for these specific examples. So let's start with Tamamio. What was life like there before the project?
Oh, Tamamio sounds like it was incredibly tough. They were dealing with severe land degradation, lots of erosion, soil losing its fertility, and a really desperate lack of safe drinking water. One resident, Miss Senet Khalate, who'd been there 35 years, just flat out said living there was extremely difficult.
Extremely difficult. That says a lot. How bad was the water situation day to day?
Another resident, Miss Safatna Idris, painted a really stark picture. Water shortages started almost as soon as the rain stopped. By April or May, she said, they were sometimes reduced to filling jerrycans, literally cup by cup from dwindling sources, and people would queue all night long around the few wells just hoping to get some water.
Spending the whole night waiting for water. That's hard to even imagine. What changed after the Tamamio Dam was built?
Well, according to Mr. Kidane Bear, a farmer there, it was a complete turnaround. The dam gives them a sustainable water supply, not just for drinking. Irrigated agriculture has been revitalized. He mentioned about 40 farmers are now growing fruits and vegetables. And really significantly, he said the underground water level has recovered beyond expectation, back to how it apparently was 70 years ago.
Recovered to levels from 70 years ago. That's not just fixing a problem, that's like ecological restoration. Amazing.
Okay, what about Dickey Gebru? What were their challenges?
Deki Gebru had suffered badly from deforestation, especially during the war years. This led to the groundwater drying up. So they had a critical shortage of drinking water, even though, ironically, the area used to have a stream historically. The environmental damage just choked it off. The village administrator, Mr. Barakab Hale, mentioned they were down to just one functioning well, an old one dug by the Italians.
Wow, down to one old well. So what happened after their dam project? Mr. Burkatab says the ecological balance has been restored, the area's natural beauty has returned, and Miss Senate Misana really highlighted the impact on women. Before, the burden of fetching water fell heavily on them. She said women were really keen on helping build the dam, and now they enjoy an easy lifestyle, comparatively. Many have even started their own small irrigated plots.
An easy lifestyle. That's such a simple but powerful description of the change. Direct link between infrastructure and women's lives improving. Was there any lingering issue mentioned at Deki Babur?
Yes, one farmer, Mr. Tekelbrantes Fazgi, brought up a practical challenge. He said farmers own about 150 water pumps, but getting fuel for them is a big problem. He actually called for support to develop gravity-fed irrigation using a higher reservoir to bypass the need for pumped fuel.
Ah, right. Having the water is one thing. Accessing and distributing it efficiently is the next step. Energy needs. Okay, moving on to Afitella.
Afitella, in the Gash-Barka region, faced similar issues: land and water degradation. The local administrator, Ms. Greta Bedoshadin, spoke about her own experience having to travel 3 hours just to get drinking water. Imagine that. And how hard that made things for livestock, too.
A 3-hour trek for water. The time and energy involved is just immense. And after their project,
Mrs. Greta confirmed the dam now provides a sustainable supply of drinking water for the community. The basic need is met. Interestingly, she also mentioned that horticulture wasn't really practiced there before, but the dam's water has opened up that possibility. People are now looking forward to starting small-scale irrigated farming.
so creating totally new agricultural opportunities. Nakfa is next a place with a lot of history in Eritrea. How does water fit into its story?
Conservation efforts actually go way back in Nakfa. Even during the arms struggle, apparently they built 2 micro-dams then, and later 3 more were built through the National Service Program. But even with those efforts, the source says prolonged droughts meant the area still suffered from severe water scarcity.
So, a history of trying, but still facing major challenges from lack of rain. What happened when the larger, medium-sized Nakfa Dam was proposed?
The town administrator, Ibrahim Mohammed Ali, said the residents were fully on board, participating happily and enthusiastically in the construction. And a resident, Ms. Jumea Osman, described the immense relief once the dam was finished and filled. She said they were completely relieved from the struggle of using scarce, poor-quality water. She also pointed out the jobs created during construction and just a general improvement in people's livelihoods.
Relief, jobs, better living standards. That's tangible impact. Did the Nakfa Dam help groundwater too?
Yes, Mr. Ibrahim also noted a significant improvement in the underground water resources locally since the dam went in. And he mentioned the community is now making good progress towards establishing irrigated farming there too.
Great. Lastly, Adikodo. The focus there was different check dams.
That's right. Adikodo is described as a community with a long history of farming, practicing horticulture for like a century. But despite their skills and hard work, they were battling intensive water scarcity and didn't have the resources to manage it. The main problem was uncontrolled water runoff during rains, washing away precious water, and topsoil made worse by deforestation.
Okay, so the skills were there, but the environment was working against them. How did the check dams help?
According to Reverend Hampton Tesfamariam, constructing check dams along the local river really changed things for the better. He says they now have enough water for people and animals, their traditional horticulture is being rejuvenated, and the groundwater levels have improved. The source also highlights the strong community involvement in building these check dams, seeing that participation as key for the future.
Yeah, these stories, they really drive home the difference this makes. From queuing all night for water to revitalized farming and replenished groundwater, it's quite profound.
It really is.
Yeah.
And when you step back, you see this comprehensive national strategy playing out over decades, using all these different types of structures, from the huge strategic dams down to village ponds, diversion weirs, check dams, tailored to the need.
Right. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach. It's
Yeah.
layered, adapting to the local landscape and water patterns.
Mhm.
And that community participation seems like a constant thread.
Absolutely crucial. It feels like a real national effort described here. Different methods, different scales, and as mentioned for those specific microdam examples, the testimonials, sometimes involving collaboration with partners like the AFDB.
Right.
It's this blend of top-down strategy and crucially bottom-up impact and involvement that seems so powerful.
Definitely. If we connect this to the bigger picture, you see how sustained investment in water infrastructure, guided by both technical planning and social equity, can fundamentally reshape possibilities for communities and agriculture.
Exactly. The transformation described is really quite extensive.
So, thinking about that scale and the decades of effort our sources describe, it makes you wonder, looking ahead, what are the really long-term ecological considerations? I mean, when you manage water so extensively across a nation for generations, what new balances or maybe even challenges emerge 50, 100 years from now? What does that kind of long-term water security look like? Something to think about.